There is no politician out there that is currently talking about this because they don't want to break up the power structure and oligarchy at play that literally funds them. Both the liberals, conservatives, NDP, Republicans, Democrats, it's all the same power structure. And that's what I want to get people to understand. Because yeah, you can change the face, you can change the facade, but does that change the underlying power structure? No. And follow the money, don't follow the political speak. In this video, I'm going to show you how the RBC CEO is getting paid over 400 times what a client advisor gets paid at RBC. But what is more significant is I want to show you how this gap has got wider and wider and wider as the banksters rob Peter to pay Paul. So let's get right into this and discuss exactly what I'm talking about. So I posted this chart on X. Since 1978, the growth of CEO pay has radically outpaced a typical worker's compensation. I've recently been reading a book by Jeremy Grantham, and he talks a lot about this, and I really do believe in this as well, because essentially a lot of the reason why you're not being paid more is not because the company doesn't have the money, it's because all that money is going to a concentrated few people at the top, and those people are using that money to wield power and influence over the governments around the world. This isn't just going on in Canada, this is in fact for the United States, but this is certainly happening in Canada, as we're going to go over right now. So first of all, let's go to my tweet and then we're going to go over the math of this. So the CEO of RBC makes more than 380 times what the average bank teller makes at RBC. Does he do 380 times of the work? No, probably not even 1/3 of the work. In the 1980s, the average bank CEO's earnings were 40 times the average worker, and I actually got that wrong. It was probably less than that in Canada. We only have data for the United States, which was 40 times. It was probably much less for Canada. So actually, it's over 400 times. That is what the CEO is making. So I'm going to warn you, this video is going to trigger you. It pissed me off a lot too, because it kind of shows you how people are literally taking from the middle class and the poor people and literally hoarding it for themselves at the top. That's where a lot of the money goes. And the reason why I want to show you this is because then when you go and look at measures like GDP per capita, this measure, if you just subtract the top 3% of earners, this thing is collapsing. This thing is absolutely tanking along with your standard of living. And this is one of the reasons why so many people want to leave Canada. Yeah, I'm emotional on this topic because it is completely ridiculous and nobody talks about this. Why don't they talk about it? There is no politician out there that is currently talking about this because they don't want to break up the power structure and oligarchy at play that literally funds them. Both the liberals, conservatives, NDP, Republicans, Democrats, it's all the same power structure. And that's what I want to get people to understand. Because yeah, you can change the face, you can change the facade, but does that change the underlying power structure? No. And follow the money, don't follow the political speak. That's what I believe anyway. Let's continue on here. So I'm going to leave a link in the description. Actually, for some reason, I took the RBC CEOs out of this and it's 2015 paper. So this comes from the CCPA. All right, so here we go. Employment earnings in 2013, the top 100 CEOs in Canada took home 195 times more than the average Canadian's pay. When you adjust that 2008 pay for inflation, an even more dramatic picture emerges. Adjusted for inflation, the average pay of the top 100 CEOs has increased by 98%, whilst the average Canadian's pay grew by 7%. And as many of you guys will know, the people at the top, especially in corporate, large companies, are literally just mouthpieces. That's all they are. They're just PR and mouthpieces. And in fact, they have secretaries that work harder for them than they actually work themselves. Why do you think so many of these people jet off to the Hamptons in the summertime? I mean, it's no coincidence that this happens. We should keep in mind that that includes the most severe economic recession recession since the 1930s, a recession from which Canada has not yet fully recovered. Looking back to 1995, the first year this data became available after regulatory changes on corporate disclosure were enacted in 1993, we can compare the compensation of the 50 highest paid CEOs with the corresponding group's pay today. In 1995, the 50 highest paid CEOs in Canada earned 85.3 times what the average Canadian worker made. In 2013, this ratio had tripled. The highest paid CEOs were making 269 times the average Canadian income. While hard data of this kind aren't available in Canada prior to 1995, it is generally accepted that in the United States, the ratio of CEO pay to average pay in the late 1980s was approximately 40 to 1. And that's what I used in the calculation, guys. And that Canada's ratio would have been somewhat lower than that. So I mean, that is just quite frankly insane when you think about the growth of this. Sure, would you expect the growth of this for people at the top, if a company is doing well, to go up as well? Yes. But if you're not paying the workers more at the bottom, there's a real disconnect that's going on there. I mean, most people who run businesses on this channel will know that your business functions well and you have a good business when you have good people. And how do you retain good people? You pay them more money. So anyway, let's go over to the RBC salaries. And by the way, guys, I'm just picking on RBC, but the fact is, if you take any of these companies like Onyx, Rogers, Magna, Element, Shaw, Quebecor, Suncor Energy, Surge Energy, Element Financial Corp, Manulife, any of these big corporations in Canada, it'll be the same thing. And essentially, this is kind of funny because it's like an old list of oligarchs, essentially. I mean, most of these will have been changed and swapped out. But even if you look at 2015, RBC CEO was getting paid $14 million in total compensation. And I want to flip over to here because basically this shows it. So Dave McKay, the current CEO, is making $16.4 million right now. And the average person at RBC, the client advisor, is making $38,195. Those are actual salaries reported. So that just kind of shows you the absolute disconnect and insanity that is going on. And this is what people don't realize. Whenever you hear this GDP per capita metric, just bear in mind, guys, that if you strip out the top 3%, this thing is absolutely tanking. And this is where the standard of living is going as well. And what are those people at the top doing? They're, of course, hoarding assets. So it's kind of crazy when you really think about what's going on. But this is literally it. You have CEOs making over 400 times what the average worker is making at that company. It's just quite frankly insane. Even if you took a salary of $60,000 a year, it would still just be massive numbers. And it's really the growth compared to the workers' growth that where you see that massive disconnect. And it just goes to show how out of touch people at the top really are. Not only these oligarchs, but also these politicians. And you won't hear anybody talking about this video. Please share this video with everybody that you know so they can realize how bad this situation really is. I'm not making an argument for socialism by any stretch of the imagination. I think that socialism is bad. But what's clearly obvious to me is that people are robbing Peter to pay Paul. Essentially, they're robbing you, saying they don't have the money to pay you, whilst paying themselves a bigger bonus. And we just saw that with the bank bonuses that I covered. And if you want to see that video, check it out here. If you also want to check out this playlist, if you're looking for a VPN, go to expressvpn.com/Market Mania to get around Trudeau's censorship laws. Thank you so much for supporting the channel and watching this video. I will see you in the next one. Take care.